so fun! Hi everybody and welcome to this video. My name is Jannis, I'm a musician and producer, and in this video I want to show you how you can create your own heavily Meshuggah inspired riffs and sequences inside your 𝗕𝗏. I'm going to use Ableton Live, but you'll be fine with any other type of 𝗕𝗏 because all we need is actually a MIDI grid and just a couple of virtual instruments. I'll first just show you the core principles of those sequences so you get some kind of theoretical understanding, although no worries, I'm not going to go super theoretical. And then I'm also going to show you different types of approaches on how you can build longer cycles and variations with those kind of core sequences. So in order to build those types of sequences, you only need to know two numbers, which are 2 and 3. And if we open now our MIDI grid, and in Ableton I'm just going to add some new clip. I've picked some instrument already, it's some synth sound. And then we get our MIDI grid. And all we do is actually make it a little longer, so we're not restricted in length. We can shorten it later still. And then you see those increments here. And those increments are 16th notes, which is the one we actually want to have. Maybe pick some slower tempo, like 100 something. We can speed up later, but this way we have a little more time to digest the rhythms, which is not wrong for this type of sequence. And now make sure you don't hear what you're doing, because we actually will only do it by intuition. And those increments you have to use for seeing whether you have a 2 or a 3 type of note. Because if I make one note here and leave one free, it has an overall duration of 2 16th notes, which equals the number 2 that I mentioned just some seconds ago. If I would have the next here, this would be 2. And if this would be the next note, again 2. But if I make one here, then this is going to last for 3 16th notes. And this is basically all that you need to know. So this would be a little too much. So here it would be again 3. And if I make one here, it would again be a 2 rhythm. Sorry, those names are weird, but it's just those numbers 2 and 3 that are really important. And this way you just create some first sequence. And don't think about it at all, like how it could sound. Just draw a little until maybe some point here where you just end the sequence. And then we can actually listen to the whole thing by just playing the clip. I kind of like it. And we have some overall duration now of actually 10 quarter notes and a half. So it could also be, this would be actually 28 notes, so it would be 21 8 notes, which sounds really scary. But since we're going to program it, we don't have to worry about it so much. And just to give you some more orientation, I have a very steady beat here on the left side that just sounds actually like this. I'll show you without the riff once. It's really simple and doesn't sound the most inspiring, but I just want to make the point clear, so the most simple beat is doing a good job here. And let's actually bring in this riff now. Yes, and I actually like it a lot. And also, with this type of riff, you could now speed it up a little, because still play with the tempo afterwards, because sometimes you compose something that just sounds better in a faster or slower tempo. So let's see. Yes. And this shifting, because you have this kind of steady 4/4 bar, but this one loops in 21 8th notes. It sounds really scary, just more frightening than it actually is. But this way the rhythm keeps shifting and keeps sounding really interesting, so you don't have this kind of static repetition. And depending on where you set the length of the loop, you can also really change the style, because let's say we remove this one, so here we have actually a 3 instead of a 2. But we're actually now putting the end of the loop on the 16th note grid. So it's 10 quarter notes and 1 16th note. It will make it sound more busy, but eventually more interesting. Let's see. also pretty cool. And if I would put it here, so we would only have actually 10 quarter notes, which you can also then state as maybe 5/4 if you divide it into 2 bars, for example. And this one sounds more steady because it always changes at least with the quarter note pulse, which makes it feel a little more not digestible, I always want to say digestible, but it's more natural to our hearing that it actually changes with the quarter notes compared to this kind of constant shifting that never gives you the feeling of knowing exactly what happens next unless you would really practice feeling this figure. And one thing is also really important to know, because now we're using 2 and 3, but you can perfectly use all sorts of multiples of those numbers, which means you can also use 4 and 6, for example, or 6 and 9, or 8 and 12. The only thing that matters is the relation, because here I'm going to show you that we can, for example, in the beginning, we have 3 times 2, actually 2 times 2. And those we could just make one note within 4 counts. So instead of having actually 2 notes played, we only have 1 note played, but it's still on the same structure. And the same with those 3s, because let's say here we have 2 times 3, and now we remove this one, so actually this one goes over the duration of 6 notes, and we basically just replaced this one. And let's see how this sounds like. This way you can actually distress a little the density of this riff, and also it's a great thing to actually use over time on your composition when, for example, for some breakdown part you don't want to have as many notes, so just use this technique to thin out the amount of notes before you make it more dense again when the whole track kind of gains on intensity. And this is actually all you need to know about the core principle of those sequences. So 2 and 3 are really the most important things here, and although this was very short in its explanation, you can now play hours and hours with those concepts, designing structures just this way. But as you also see, we're only using 1 note so far. And that's why now I want to show you some concepts on how to add notes and also how to make those cycles a little more interesting over time. Let's go. So for the clip, I actually liked that it was the 21/8 note concept. So here I'm going to add a note again. So we're back at this old figure, and yeah, here we also had more notes, and I just use them all for now. Again, maybe we'll thin out later, but what I want to show you now is that you can add variety, for example, by sometimes changing the octave, because especially with synthesizer sounds, it can sound really cool if you just shift this down, and on Ableton you just press Shift and the down button of your keyboard. And if you do this for a couple of notes, it can actually sound really cool and engaging, especially with those 2 notes being played quickly after each other. And we're a little low for this bass note, so let's actually go a little high. This is a great concept because you kind of hear it almost as 2 different sequences. You have one sequence which is like the low part, and one sequence that is the high part. And this way it almost sounds like some polyrhythm within the polyrhythm, which is just super cool. And you can even go more crazy by every now and then even go to the higher octave. Let's see what happens here. If you want to, but you don't need to use octaves all the time. It's also fun to just find another pitch that creates some sort of tension. Some very dark interval, for example, is the minor second, which would be just 1 step higher or lower. sounds really cool. Or lower is also nice. And you can just go note by note to refine this until you have something that you feel very happy about. Another nice interval, if you want this dark sound, is a tritone, for example. So in E, a tritone would actually be in sharp, so it would be A sharp, which is here. Yes. And you can have a lot of fun with it. And also, you don't have to use the same one always for those variations. So for example, if you use here the major second, but here the minor third, so it would sound like some minor tonality, and maybe here you would go down to the D. Actually, now we're so much into this minor second that I think it sounds better if we put this here. What's also fun is to actually add notes to the first figure we had. So now I switched it back to only one note. And now in those spaces that you see between, you can actually use the octave, which can sound extremely funky. And you just, again, start by doing it somewhere to see what happens, because you surely get this polyrhythmic stuff again. Yes. I like it a lot. And it just perfectly fills those spaces. And you just do it everywhere. And it sounds really funky. And again, sometimes in between you might want to use the tritone, or sometimes even the perfect fifth would it be here from the E, so it doesn't sound so dark. And of course, use all sorts of combinations. Maybe sometimes you still want to go to the minor second. The D sometimes. So fun. The shifting really keeps it vivid and active and is really pleasant to listen to. And that was it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. Of course, I could only scratch surfaces here and there's just so much more to explore inside this topic. But if this video was at least a little bit inspiring to you, I'm already super happy. And if that's the case, before you head over to your door now, please take one more second to click the like button. And you're also more than warmly invited to subscribe to this channel, because there are many videos about creative music production, also some performances, and you can do so by clicking this button. And also there's another video about Meshuggah that might be interesting to you that you can find here. Apart from that, I wish you lots of inspiration with whatever it is that you create, and hope to see you around soon again at this channel. Bye.